Hey y'all, welcome back. This is entry 32 to Thoughts of a Black Queen podcast, a woman's lifestyle blog. This is a woman's thoughts on her triggers and 5 ways to unarm them. So I hope that you guys are taking a moment to just chill right now. It's Self-Care Sunday. Well, it's Self-Care Sunday as I'm recording this. I don't know if it's Self-Care Sunday while you're listening, but hopefully it is. Grab something to drink, grab something to sip on, your wine, your tea, your liquor, if that's what you want. But just chill and vibe out. And yeah, let's do this.
Let's do this.
It's showtime.
You're listening to the Thoughts of a Blog Queen podcast.
These are just my thoughts.
With your host, LaRae Renee.
A woman, her thoughts, and a mic.
Are you ready? Check this out.
Alright, you guys, so I hope you went and grabbed a snack or a little drink. I'm not drinking anything but water right now. So, but that's just me. You know, you do you. You do you, and I'm gonna do me. I'm just drinking on some water right now. But that might change within the next couple of hours. I don't know. But anyways, you guys, so before I get started and before we talk about this headline topic of triggers, I just wanted to kind of throw a couple of announcements out there. One being, I have changed the day. As you can see, this episode dropped on a Sunday, and that is going to be the official day that we do new episodes. It previously was Thursdays, so if you know, you know. If you don't, now you know we're doing Sundays. I feel like I really want to get in tune with this whole Self-Care Sunday thing, and I really want to push for just taking a moment to yourself. And I really want to push for, subscribing to some podcasts, if not just mine, or, even if not mine, just finding podcasts in general. I feel like they're very therapeutic. I feel like they're very interesting. And once you find a few that you really can get in tune with, you really will fall in love with your host, and you'll fall in love with just being able to sit back and have a conversation. You're not really having a conversation, but you're listening to a conversation, but you will find yourself in the moment of where, you can relate to it, or you will find that you might bring it up later on in the week with someone, but you really will, kind of connect with a podcast. So I really want to advocate it, not just because I am a podcaster and I want you guys to tune in, but also because I regularly listen to podcasts, and I really get a lot of good stuff out of them. You'll be surprised at the things that you'll find when you decide to follow along with a podcaster and their platform and join their communities and their emails and things they have. There's some great content creators out there, y'all. So support them, support me. If not me, support somebody. But anyways, moving right along. So that was the first announcement. We're doing it on Sundays. That's that. Second announcement I want to talk about, I've talked about this a little bit before, building my community up, and I've talked about the lobby. So I'm building a community on Discord. If you don't know what Discord is, it is an app that you can download. You can build a community, and it's really cool, y'all. It is a dope app, and the way that you can break stuff down and have different rooms for your community is really cool, and I'm working on building mine up. So if you want to be a part of what I am calling the lobby, and you want to meet me over in the lobby, head over to the link in my Instagram. So wherever you can find my link tree for Blog Queen, everything is there. So the easiest way to get there is to hit me up on Instagram, which is Thoughts of the Blog Queen _podcast. Hit the link in the bio and you will see all of the Blog Queen things. And there is a link there that will take you to my Discord community, which, like I said, is under construction. So it's brand new. I'm still working on it, but you should be able to still have access to it. There's going to be some different things from what I share on Instagram and Facebook. As soon as I get the numbers up and the members there and I see how active it's going to be over in the lobby, we're going to do some different stuff over there. So that was the other thing that I wanted to talk about. Join me on my Discord. All right, so announcements are out of the way. So y'all, I hope y'all are good. I hope y'all are good. I don't think I have anything, any news for myself that I wanted to talk about. Other than the fact that I am starting on my self-publishing book journey, I did take I want to say I took way longer than I anticipated in deciding on what I wanted to write about, but I finally did. I narrowed it down. I got the outline. I'm going. It's going. It's a work in progress, y'all. It's a work in progress. It's happening. So mark my words, your girl will be a self-published author. When that happens, yeah. I don't know, but it's going to happen. So just remember this moment. Remember that I said it. Just remember that I said it. That's all I'm saying. Just remember that I said it. Because there's going to be a point, at some point, where I'm going to be like, y'all, go get the book. Link in the bio. Anyway. So anyways, y'all, so that's all the announcements that I got for you guys today. Other than, one last announcement. This is like church. Like all these damn announcements. All these damn announcements. Like, can we get to the service? Can you hurry up with the announcement? My last announcement that I do have is that y'all need to, I need you guys to join my email list. So again, head over to the link in my bio and join the email subscription. Because I have some things that I want to send out. And I already, if you've already subscribed, then you know the type of things that I send out. I send out my love letters and things like that. Discount codes for the merch site. Just little different things like that. So if you're not subscribed, please do that. Join me. I got some good stuff I want to pump out to you guys, and I want everybody to take advantage of it. So anyway, let's get into, I wasn't going to do our question of the day, but I think we can talk, we can dabble in the question of the day a little bit. All right. So Facebook. So I have my Facebook page. Click the like button over there if you're not there. Listen, follow me on all the things. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram. Join my Discord. Sign up for the email. Do all of the things. If you rock with me, do all of the things. Because all of those things that I just said, all of those things are completely free. Right? And they support me. So if you want to support me, those are the things that you can do. Anyway, on Facebook, every now and then we have a question of the day. The last question of the day that I dropped, I was talking about an unpopular opinion. I asked, name an unpopular opinion that you think you have. And there was some good, there was a couple of good answers that we had that I wanted to read. One of them was left by Slayed by Shay Shay. Head over to the page on Facebook. Click the like button there. Baddest hairstylist in Columbia, South Carolina, if you're in the surrounding area. Slade_by_Shay Shay. So her unpopular opinion was this. Everyone, and I mean everyone, is insecure and anxious. And most people deny it because they're not in tune with themselves. Listen, when I read that and then I was like, but then I read it again and I was like, wow. I get it. I had to listen. I think I'm pretty good at stepping out of certain things and really taking them for what they are. And I really understand where she was going. And the thing about it is that people are not going to admit that. They're not. And just like she said, because they're not in tune with themselves, we're not going to hear about people talking about how insecure they are. We're going to hear about how people have everything together and how they don't let anything faze them. But then when you really think about it, I really feel like everybody does have some sort of insecurity because you're human. How could you not? How could you not? So, she said that, and when I responded to it, kind of the way that the perspective that I kind of has, I felt like people are going to be more prone to accepting the fact that they're anxious about something because because when you say, oh, well, anxiety is, it's my anxiety, you're more able to use that as a reason for why you did something or why you reacted a certain type of way, or just you're able to kind of use anxiety as a crutch, because I really feel like a lot of people do. And I really feel like there's some people who really have no idea what anxiety is, and they think that they do. Listen, anxiety is a bitch. It really is. But anyway, I feel like people are going to be more prone to using that, but when it comes down to saying that they're insecure about something, they're just not going to want to do that. And so I can't really ever speak for anybody else. I can only ever speak for myself. And then I had to think about it, and I'm like, okay, so what am I insecure about anything, and what am I insecure about? It really like caused me to sit and to think about just myself. And I'm like, what do I feel like I'm insecure about? And there were things that came up, but I'm not talking about those. Well, you know what? Honestly, actually, I do talk about some of those things. I talk about them. I have talked about them on my podcast. I think that's the one space where I am a little bit more vulnerable. And you've heard different pieces of things that I feel like I've experienced, anxiety being one of them. But I feel like people just don't want it, because we have to, like, for society and for people around us, our inner circles and things, we have to appear a certain type of way. So we want to, make it seem like we have all our shit together, and we want to make it seem like nothing bothers us, and we have this confidence. And I feel like that's kind of like there's like a thin line between like wanting to be able to prove that you're confident in yourself and having high self-esteem, and just like, but like also you can like overly do it and just do like to overcompensate when you really are feeling insecure about something. So I guess the question that I ask is like, how are we benefiting from exposing our insecurities? Or do we have to expose our insecurities? Or if not that, and I'm not saying that we have to be like on social media just talking about, oh, well, I'm insecure about this. We don't have to do that, but it's just like she said, it's being in tune with yourself, which I correlate that to being honest with yourself. For one, being honest with yourself about what it is that you are insecure about, being realistic about it, even if you're not talking about it with anybody else, just being, because if you're covering it up and you're not addressing it and you're not being honest with yourself about how insecure you are in whatever area it is, you're not doing anything about it, right? You're not doing the root work for it. You're not fixing it. You're not trying to make it better. You're not trying to make it so that you're not insecure about it. You're not learning how to embrace it. If it, you know what I mean? Whatever the issue is that you're insecure about, if you're not really being real about that with yourself, you're not doing anything about it. Because the first step to anything, the first step to anything is to actually be honest about it. You have to be honest about that situation first and foremost. So I thought that was a really good answer. I thought that was a really good unpopular opinion, because you really don't really hear people talking about that. So yeah, I get it. So, it's just something to think about. I think the question of the day, I like to do those because I just like to, just to hear the perspective of other things. And I think that it makes for great content for the podcast. I can, throw something out there and get people to thinking about different things. So like I said, if you're not following me on Facebook, if you do, head over there. You will see periodically. I don't do it every day. Just kind of when something hits me and I feel like, oh, this is something I want to throw out there. Then I'll do the question of the day and kind of do an assessment of the answers. And just like I just shouted out, Shay, I'll pick out an answer or two and just kind of throw that out there. So anyway, let's get into this headline topic, which is why a lot of you came here to hear me to talk about triggers. And there's a lot to unpack there. there's a lot to unpack with triggers. And the first thing that I want to say is that I do really feel like the word trigger, like a couple of other things, I feel like they're being thrown out there, just like what I just mentioned with like anxiety. I feel like the word trigger, I feel like people are using it like, I mean, they're wringing it out. So they're getting everything out of it that they can when they really don't even need to be using that. It's not really necessarily a trigger. And I was listening to this podcast, and the podcast that I was listening to is called Out of the Dark with Mandisa and Laura. And I was listening to them talk about, they had an episode talking about triggers, right? So I wanted to just kind of see what they had to say as I was kind of like, doing my research and gathering my notes and stuff for this episode. I was listening to that. And one of the ladies was talking about how the word triggered is being desensitized. And when she said that, she's exactly what I just said. She was saying how people are just saying it, but they don't really realize that there is a very deep rooted psychological meaning to what it is to be triggered by something. And people are using that word when really they're just annoyed at shit. Like, you could be just pissed off about something and get extremely angry about something, and you'll say, oh, that triggers me, because it triggers you to make you angry is what you're saying. But unless you really have like an anger management issue, like you really can't control your anger, and you go into this whole like tornado of anger, and you start tearing shit up and start just doing dumb shit when you're angry, unless you have that type of situation, being angry in the moment, that is not a trigger, y'all. That's not a trigger. It is an annoyance. It's just anger. It's a strong feeling of anger, but it is not a trigger. So what is a trigger? A trigger is something that is connected to a very traumatic experience that someone has gone through, PTSD, anxiety. There's something that a person has gone through at some point in their life, and they are still harboring some sort of hurt or pain or feeling anxiety or some PTSD, something. They're still harboring something in their mental that is connected to that experience, and that there can be certain factors in their environment that is around them that can bring that feeling when they were in that moment out of them. That's why it's like a trigger, because it just happens out of nowhere. It happens very fast. They're brought back to that moment when they went through that experience based on something that is happening in the present. So let's I want to break that down a little bit more. When you have like having a trigger, it signals to you, like it's letting you know there's something that's like you need to do some work on, right? So a trigger can be related to a sight. A trigger can be related to a sound. It can be related to a smell even, right? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples so that you are clear on exactly what a trigger is. When I was listening to this podcast, one of the ladies was talking about how she knew she had a trigger. She had been sexually abused, right, for many years. And so now, even though that happened when it happened, it's been a little bit of, it's been a little time since then. Whenever someone comes up to her from behind and touches her unexpectedly, she tenses up and she gets very, very anxious. And in that moment, that takes her back to that experience of when she was being sexually abused, because there's some kind of connection with coming up from behind her and physically being touched from behind when she didn't expect it. That triggers something. When someone does that, fast forward to today, when someone does that, and they may not even know, realize what she's gone through, and they don't know that about her. When they do that, that's triggering for her, right? Another example could be, and this was an example that not only that they talked about in the podcast, but I've heard this example before. I don't know where I heard it, but I've heard this before. Someone who, for instance, has been in the military and has gone over to war, and they've actually fought in the war. I mean, like real life, guns firing, bombs going off, like just chaotic, really like trying to protect yourself, trying to protect your unit and things. you hear a lot of noise, a lot of loud noises. You're just going through day after day, night after night, hearing gunshots and things like that. So moving forward, when you have like a veteran or you have someone who's gotten out of the military and they're in regular society, they could hear a loud boom, or they could hear a gunshot, or they could hear something really loud unexpectedly go off and immediately be triggered by that. They automatically go into like this fight or flight mode. Something like they have a flashback, and it just reminds them of their experience in the war. That is a trigger. That's a trigger. Right? Another example could be, and I'll give you kind of like more of a personal, when you have been in experience, when you've been cheated on, right? So I know I was in a relationship where I had been cheated on, right? So when you're in that relationship and you've been cheated on and you've been hurt and you have experienced certain things in that relationship, and you're reminded of what was done to you in that relationship, that can bring about a trigger. So let me unpack that a little bit more. In a relationship before, I know that the person that I was with that cheated on me, the woman that he had cheated with, right? There was a certain song that I'm not going to even get into all of that part of it I'm not going to go that far, but there had been a certain song that had been associated with her, right? So anytime I heard that song, I was immediately brought to that point in my life where I knew that that person had cheated on me with this particular woman because this song was associated with that woman, right? So that's a sound. That's a sound that triggered me and brought me back to a lot of that pain, that hurt, that mistrust, everything that went on in that particular relationship that, reminded me of that. It took me back to that. And for a long time, I had to figure out, like, anytime I would hear that song, y'all, it did something to me. It literally, I think I could like cry on cue. And it just gave me these thoughts. It gave me these, these thoughts I did not want to have. And it really made me feel, like I was really treated like shit, right? And it just really brought a lot of emotion out of me. It really brought the hurt that I felt in that relationship for a long time. Like that really solidified it when everything came out and I realized everything that was going on. It was like, okay, I see what that does to me. And it just brought, like, that one little song, just hearing that song, like for a long time, I could not listen to that song because it literally took a toll on my emotions. And it was just like a domino effect where it was like one thing brought another thing, and then another thing reminded me. It was like it was a shit show of emotions is what it was. And so that was a trigger, right? So what I learned is that triggers can typically so in the research, like clinical research that has been done, and this is not just like this is what it is, but this is just from the research that has been done and what has been like kind of it has been found to be is that triggers last for 90 seconds, right? So when something happens for 90 seconds, think about when you say seconds, you're thinking that it's not long, right? But for a minute and a half can feel like an eternity depending on what it is. So if a trigger lasts for 90 seconds, think about how long that could be for someone who has to live through whatever that traumatic experience was, whatever it is that they had to go through, think about how they have to go through that for 90 seconds. That's a long ass time. That is a long ass time. So when you think about like the examples that I just gave, any one of those examples. So when I was talking about the young lady from the podcast, like how she tenses, like in that moment, if someone touches her, she said her whole body tenses up, right? And she's thinking about the abuse that she went through. So when you're sitting there and you got these mental images playing in your head for 90 seconds, think about what that does. It will drive you crazy, right? It will drive you absolutely crazy. So when you're really truly being triggered by something, that's why I wanted to make sure that I address the fact that everything is not a trigger. But when you're really being triggered by something, that is why it is so important that when you know that you're being triggered and you have these triggers, that you work on it, because you can, it's shitty to have to relive and to have to be reminded of something that it was so painful to you. And if you want to begin to work through those types of things, I feel like you need to be able to have certain tools to work on those things, right? So that's why I wanted to give you guys a few ideas, a few tips, if you want to call it that, on how to kind of work through those moments of being triggered. And I also wanted to make sure that we try to always find, one thing I always tell people is to try to find the positives in everything and try to look at things for beyond what they are. Try to. It's not always easy, but try to. So if we looked at triggers as more of, even though, there's such a negative connotation attached to having a trigger or being triggered by something, even though we have that, let's try to use it as positive of a tool that we can. Whereas I feel like being triggered will let us know that there's something in us that we need to work on. There's something in us that is not healed. There's something in us that, because you know what I mean? Like we could just, and it brings awareness, right? Awareness is big. So if we're aware of something that we need to work on, we're able to kind of like, begin that process. For me, it's like, and honestly, it didn't take as long for me from that particular situation that I had, as far as like being cheated on and being triggered by certain things that I was hearing and seeing or whatever. I had okay, so let me back up. The first tip that I want to give you guys is grounding yourself and being realistic about the moment. So that was what I had to use in order for me to be able to grow out of that trigger that I had from that particular relationship and being cheated on. I had to ground myself. So even after I left out of that relationship, after I moved on and I was no longer in the relationship with that person, obviously feelings don't just die. Feelings don't just go away overnight. It takes a moment to move on and to, get out of those, grow out of those feelings and be happy without that person in your life anymore and move on. But in that space where I was still trying and I was still being triggered by certain things, and there was so much more. I just gave a little piece of it, like hearing that song and seeing that woman and just knowing all that stuff. That was just a little piece. There was a lot of stuff that packed into that, but that was just, one of the things that I had to deal with, and how easily it was for me to be triggered by something. I could just hear a song and be immediately be reminded of that experience. But what I had to do to be able to grow out of that was I had to ground myself. And so by grounding yourself, what I mean by that is that you are taking a moment to step outside of the feeling. And remember, they said the trigger lasts for 90 seconds, right? So within that 90 seconds, if you just stop a moment because you're feeling how you're feeling in that moment, you step out of yourself and you're like, okay, hold on. Right now, what's happening? Like, be realistic about it. What's happening right now is this. Right now, I am feeling a certain type of way about a man that I am no longer in a relationship with. Right now, someone has control over my emotions that I have not talked to in months. Months being that at that point in time. It's been years since then, but at that point in time, it had been months. Right now, someone has control over me, someone who hurt me, someone who did me wrong, someone who did not give a shit about me. Right now, they have a control over my life right now. And I don't want that for him. I don't want that for me. I don't want them to be allowed to have that control because I have made a choice. I'm not even in that relationship anymore. So how in the hell can I still allow that to happen, right? I had to ground myself. I had to be realistic about what's happening. If you can step outside of yourself right now and kind of talk to yourself in that moment, girl, do you see what's happening right now? You right now are feeling a certain type of way over someone that you're not going to spend your life with, someone who was not meant to be with you, someone who was seasonal in your life, someone who hurt you, someone who has shown you exactly what you mean to them, which was not a lot. Someone who made a choice to do something to you that they knew would hurt you. That's not someone that you want to spend your life with anyway, right? So you had to go through this. Unfortunately, you had to. It was inevitable. Something was going to tear you from out of that person's life and them from out of yours because it wasn't meant to be a forever thing. It wasn't meant to be for at that time. And right now, you're being triggered by something and you're feeling a certain type of way over something that is not going to serve you in your future, right? It's not. So that was how I was able to ultimately move on from that situation and be okay with that situation and eventually, honestly, be able to be friendly with that person. Like I don't even think about that anymore when I see that person. And I had several interactions just from being in the public with that. Like it didn't bother me anymore because I had figured out a way to unarm that trigger. It didn't belong to me anymore because I really was able to ground myself in the moment. And that worked for me. That's not going to work for everybody in every situation. Like I don't know how effective that would be for someone who had gone through something a little bit different, such as sexual abuse, as we talked about. I don't know that technique would be the most effective. It is about finding out what works best for you. Depending on the severity of whatever it is that you had gone through, whatever the trauma was that was attached to it, there's going to be different levels of different ways that you're going to have to try to unarm those triggers, right? So that's the first one. So ground yourself and be realistic about what's happening. All right. So my second tip that I got, and I had to do a little bit of research on this one. There is a therapeutic technique and it's called EMDR. So it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And this is a form of therapy, and there are 8 phases in this form of therapy. There's 8 phases, and the phases are history taken, client preparation, assessment, desensitization, installation, body scan, closure, and reevaluation. Now, I am going to draw the line here at a certain point with this particular one because I'm not a therapist. So I would imagine breaking each of these down would take a very long, all these phases would take a lot. But what I did want to just break down the phase that I wanted to get into, the one particular phase that I wanted to break into so that I can kind of tell you what EMDR is the assessment phase. So EMDR is a form of therapy that you engage with this is something that you actually have to go to therapy for, and you have to have a counselor to guide you through this. But ultimately what they do is that they take you through these phases, and when they get to the assessment phase, you're actually it's like you're facing this traumatic experience. It's like you're being triggered in a healthy way, if you guys can understand that. They're purposely taking you to these triggers, and it's like guided therapy in that moment. So they're actually, it's like they're walking you to this trauma, this experience. They're walking you to it. And then you're stopping there. They're asking you how you're feeling. They're asking you to describe it at its most vulnerable state. They're asking you to, give your, really be vulnerable in that moment. And then they are helping you to desensitize yourself from being triggered. It's really a very, I want to do some, what I did not do is I didn't look up to see like if there were any type of examples or any sessions of someone going through this process. I don't know if that anything is out there like that, but I think that it's a great way to work with someone that has a trigger, because you have someone there with you. It's purposeful. You have someone there with you that has the tools to get through it, because when you're just at home and you're triggered, you're liable to do anything, right? You're liable to throw shit. You're liable to cuss somebody out. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's different when it just happens, but when you actually go into therapy for it and you're going through each of these phases and you're with your counselor and you're face to face and they're taking you, it's almost as if they're holding your hand through the process and they're safely getting you through this trigger, and you're approaching it, and they're working and they're letting you know why that trigger is what it is. They're, validating your feelings there, and they're showing you how to safely unarm those things. So I think that it's something, and this was something that from the research that I found, this came about back in 1989. And it has been pretty successful in all the clinical trials that they've done on it. It's been pretty successful. A lot of session counselors and therapists, a lot of, they psychologically use this, and they have great things to say about it. And it's something that is really helpful. So depending on what it is, now for me, I don't think that, like, for the example, the personal example that I gave, I don't think that I per se needed EMDR for that particular situation. I don't think that was something that, I don't think it was as severe, because I was able to work through it myself. But I think it's a great technique to be able to safely approach a trigger and unarm it in the most effective way possible, right? So that's what they're doing there. So if you feel like you're in, like therapy right now, especially in my community, I really want to vouch for it. I really want people to not be afraid of it. I don't want them to look at it as though it's something that, classifies them as being crazy or anything like that. It is a good thing. If you we need more of it, and we need more people to be honest about it, about needing it and wanting it. And you don't have to go off and tell everybody that you're doing it, but as long as you're going through it, if you know that that's something that is going to benefit you, then I highly, highly, highly recommend seeking, some therapy sessions for yourself. All right, so that was tip number 2. So we got grounding yourself, we got EMDR. My third tip is more so for when you're being triggered and you're being in a relationship, right? So my third tip is to explain what's happening right now. And I think that this kind of connects with the first tip that I gave when I said, like, grounding yourself. So I feel like if you're in a relationship with someone, right, because a lot of times people go into relationships, and they go into relationships, honestly, with some of the baggage that they've had before. I did a whole episode on this. I feel like it's like with trust issues. I feel like, and that might be an unpopular opinion, I feel like that some people don't think that if you have trust issues, you should be in a relationship. People say you shouldn't be in a relationship until you don't have trust issues. And I don't believe that. But I feel like if you are in a relationship and you're being triggered by something, or you have trust issues, something set you off. So let me give a good example. So if you're in a relationship with someone, and say your guy or your woman wants to go to, I don't know, say one of their friends is getting married and they're going to the bachelor or bachelorette party, right? And in your past, you you found out that you know, like maybe someone you were in a relationship with, maybe they cheated on you, and they cheated on you the night they went to a bachelor party and they got a stripper pregnant. I don't know. I'm just I'm just trying to think of something, just anything, right? But you guys get the point. Something reminds you, something that your current partner is getting ready to do or just did, takes you back to a place of mistrust because of what something else did, right? So you will combine tip 1, where you ground yourself and realize this person is not that person. Be realistic, right? This person is not that person. And then explain what's happening. So this is where communication comes in, where you got to let them know, okay, listen, a minute ago, I know that I just threw your keys over the balcony because I didn't want you to leave. And I know that wasn't right. I know that wasn't right. I shouldn't have did that. But let me explain to you what was happening in the moment. I'm just tripping around, y'all. But seriously, like, you explain to them, this is why I felt this way, and this is why I reacted the way that I did, because what's happening right now is that you're reminding me of a situation that I've been in, and I need to explain that to you because I need you to understand what I'm feeling right now, why it feels that way. And I just need to have a conversation with you. Maybe I need a little bit of your reassurance. Maybe I need for you to just kind of like, I don't know, talk to me in this moment. Maybe I need you to accept my apology because I realized that I shouldn't have threw your keys. I shouldn't have did that. That was messed up. And I overreacted a little bit. And I'm making light of it, y'all, but I'm being serious. Because I'm just imagining somebody like, you about to go where? No, you're not. And you just, you just toss the damn keys over the balcony. And I'm thinking about my like, anyway, I'm doing too much. So if you're explaining yourself in the moment and you're letting them know that you're feeling a certain type of way. And that's not like you really, like, in all jokes aside, you really want to talk to them. You really want to tell them that you feel this way. This is why. And you're understanding of the moment, and you're understanding that this person didn't have anything to do with these feelings. And this is where you have to really, hopefully, have someone that you're with that is understanding. And that's why I stress that if it is important that if you go into a relationship and you know you do still have trust issues, you have to talk about that before you get into a relationship with that person. At least give them that, you know what I mean? Like, let them decide. Like, give them that courtesy of letting them know that you're still working through some things, and that you would like to be in a relationship, but you're still working through some things, and that you may need their help. Right? So it's explaining what's happening and bringing understanding. Right? So that was the third one. So we have grounding yourself. We have EMDR therapy. And then we have explaining what's happening in the moment and bringing an understanding to the situation, to the circumstance, right? The fourth tip that I have is limiting the exposure to what is triggering you, most likely, right? So for a lot of people, social media or people or going certain places, if you know that you're going to see, like, we all know what's on social media, right? We all know. So if you know that you're going to easily be triggered by something that you see on social media, maybe don't watch that TikTok that's, talking about a woman being cheated on who's doing a story time about being cheated on. Story time of the time I caught my baby daddy with his ex-girlfriend in my garage. Maybe don't watch that. You know what I mean? Like, maybe don't watch Divorce Court, or maybe don't, you know what I mean? Like, make the choice to expose yourself to things that are going to benefit you, right? So maybe don't watch certain things. Maybe don't participate in certain things, right? Maybe take time, and this is a good example right here, Self-Care Sunday. Maybe after everything that you've been, dealing with for the whole week, maybe Sunday is a day that you just step away from social media completely, right? Because that was one of my challenges, right? Stepping away from social media, stepping away from music, and just listening to a couple of podcasts as your entertainment for the day. But limiting your exposure to things that you know are going to, trigger you. Seeing certain things, if you know that certain things are going to bother you, you know what I mean? Like, maybe don't watch a lot of that. Right now, if you are on TikTok, there's a lot of stuff out there. We're seeing home invasions. We're seeing attempted kidnappings. If you're someone who suffers with anxiety, maybe don't be on TikTok a lot, because you're going to see a lot of that. Or maybe start using the settings. A lot of these apps, I don't know if you guys pay attention, but a lot of these apps, you can set things up. There's certain sensitivity that you can set things up. And I even think that even like if you're on TikTok, I think that you can put certain keywords in and they will block out. You have to really explore your settings, because a lot of these apps, they're really taking that sensitive material, they take it serious, and they take it, the settings and things you can go through. There's a lot of stuff that you can prevent yourself from having to even be exposed to. So if that's a way that you know that you're going to be ticked off, or you're going to be triggered in a way, maybe start, working on that. Maybe limit yourself. Right? So that was number 4, limiting exposure to what is most likely going to trigger you. Right? And my 5th and last tip that I have, because I want to wrap it up. We're a little over 45 minutes. That's longer than I wanted. But the last tip that I have is it has to do with oversharing. Right? And this is a little bit more, there's a couple of layers to this. I feel like with people, we'll share things with people. We'll tell people about things that are going on. And sometimes we do it in the moment, and we do it in a situation. Sometimes we kind of put our foot in our mouths. We share certain things with people that we maybe should have kept to ourselves. So being mindful of that, I think, was going to be helpful in preventing your triggers. Because here's the thing. Sometimes people will use what you say against you. Okay, I'm going to say that again. People will use what you tell them in confidence against you later on down the road. They will use those things against you, and you will think in that moment that everything is good. And some things you really can't help. You really can't help it. You share things because you share things, or certain situations, sometimes people were there, and sometimes you just can't help it. But with the things that you can help, you make a decision to share certain parts of your life. All I'm saying is be mindful of those things that you share with other people, and realize that those things at any given point could come back and be used against you if that person chooses to. We want to think the best of everybody. We want to think, we don't want to think that people are going to intentionally use things, but they will. This can be in friendships. This can be in relationships. This can be with coworkers. This could be a work-related type of thing. Be mindful of the things that you share and the things that you say. And the reason why I say this is because people can use things against you and throw that back up at you to try to hurt you and to try to trigger you. So it all kind of connects. Like, just making sure that you're being protective over information and things that you share. Because if you share certain things about your relationship that you endured, or that you're enduring, that you're still going through because you haven't left yet, because that's a whole process itself. But if you're sharing with other people, or you're sharing with, say, someone in your family that you know that this person is cheating on you, or is doing whatever to you, be mindful of the fact that that person can use that against you at any given point, and that will be a trigger. They will, and it will trigger you. in that, however they choose to use it against you or throw it back in your face. Well, you remember this, and they're saying that to you, and that's what's going to trigger you. So being mindful and being protective of information and protective of personal information that you share, and being mindful of who you're talking to, and keeping certain information to yourself and sharing it within the, seek therapy. If you must share certain things, seek therapy, especially serious things like that. Where if you want to talk about something that you had gone through that was very traumatic, maybe don't share that certain information with a coworker, or maybe don't, because you just never know, right? People will say things in moments, sometimes purposely, and sometimes they say things and they didn't mean to. They don't realize that they said a certain thing, and that it's going to cause you to feel a certain type of way. So just being mindful. I think that overall, however you need to apply that, that's the tip. Being more mindful of certain things, right? Being mindful. So I'm going to run it all back. Grounding yourself in the moment and being realistic. EMDR therapy. Explaining what's happening and bringing understanding to the moment as it's happening. Limiting exposure to what is triggering you or what is most likely to trigger you. And being more mindful of sharing information. Those are my 5 tips. Those are my 5 tips to unarm or to assist and guide you through being triggered. Gosh, you guys, this was a long episode, and I typically try to keep my episodes a little bit shorter, because I feel like podcasts shouldn't go on for too long. But so, you may get through half of this and you may come back, you may have had to come back to this. That's fine. Hopefully you'll be able to get through all of it. And hopefully, if this is something that you're dealing with or that you've dealt with, hopefully you're able to get something out of this. If there's just one thing that you can pull out of this entire episode and think about it later on down the line, or relate to it, or use it, or remember it, or share it with someone else, then I've done what I've wanted to accomplish with this podcast, which is just to share certain information, share different things that we deal with from a lifestyle standpoint, and being able to assist other women with things that we all have to deal with and we all have to go through. And I feel like having triggers is something that is very common. It's something that a lot of us have had to deal with. It's something that a lot of us are dealing with. And I just hope that, you guys can find something out of this. So with that being said, I am going to wrap this episode up. I thank you guys so much for tuning in, supporting me. I'm sorry this one was so long. This one, we're at 53 minutes exactly. That's long. But I guess I had a lot to unpack here. I'll be mindful next time, you guys. I'll try to scale it under 40 minutes if I can. 30 minutes is the goal. 30 minutes is always my goal for an episode, but So anyways, you guys, thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, follow me on all the things: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Sign up for the email, join my Discord, share this with somebody, let somebody know. Give me your feedback wherever you're following me. Give me your feedback. Let me know what you think. If anything helped you, show ideas. There are promotional opportunities, sponsorships available, advertising. If you have a small business and you want me to advertise, if you want to sponsor the show, you can sponsor an episode, you can sponsor a month of episodes. I have different packages available. Please email me, blogqueenpodcast@gmail.com. All the information will be in the show notes. And until next time, you guys, peace and blessings.
Let's do this.
It's showtime.
You're listening to the Thoughts of a Blog Queen podcast.
These are just my thoughts.
With your host, LaRae Renee.